Hey, it's Scott and Warren from the Club of Vexia Exchange. Hello, brother.
Hello, my man. How we doing?
We're doing good. You
Feeling
ready
good?
for episode 3?
3 already. Three strikes.
We got 3. This will be number 3. How'd you feel about last week's episode?
You know, it was really cool to connect with Cassie.
Yeah.
Really love the topic of the Blue Zone. Love what that's all about. I love our version of it.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm really excited to really lean into that.
What's interesting, which became a natural for episode number 3, was to bring in our dear friend Gregory Tranah, PhD, epidemiologist, because it was through a lot of the workshops that he did on the science of healthy aging that sort of made the connection for us that we are creating our own Blue Zone.
Greg and I met Greg right when we first opened, I believe, right, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, he's one of the coolest cats I've ever met as an epidemiologist, and haven't met too many of them, but he's actually
of all my epidemiologist friends, you're my favorite.
I'm your favorite.
He's my favorite. He actually, it was great. It was like it's funny because all I remember is when I talked to him, it was like we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that you really connect
Greg's
with.
one of those guys, for sure.
You know, he thinks like us, but. Greg, like I said, you're such a cool cat, and I mean that in all good ways. But tell us a little bit about you and you know what about Avexia kind of brought you to where you're sitting in the seat here.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, to talk a little bit about what I do and then why it makes sense for us to be here now is. I'm a scientist. I study aging. I study human aging. I've been working on projects from DNA sequencing to trying to understand how sleep and circadian rhythms impact aging, but not just aging, but lots of conditions we worry about with aging. And I think the thing that I find most kind of motivating is actually getting out and talking about what I do and what the people in my field do. Because I think it's really important, and it's part of like our responsibility as scientists, especially scientists who are funded through NIH and things that are, basically thanks to all of our taxes.
Right.
It's up to us to present this to the public so we can all learn and all be educated. And so when I started here at Avexia some years ago, you said I'm OG, so I'm like OG. One of the original Avexia cohort. I saw what you're doing here. I saw you had lots of community events. You had lots of partner events, and you had a beautiful space for working, for parties, for presentations. And I was like, this is a great opportunity, if you'll have me, to allow me to bring the kind of research my colleagues and I do, and to bring that to the membership. Because I present to the general public a lot. And what I find interesting about doing that is that every audience kind of needs a different type of presentation. So if it's to people who maybe aren't, consistent exercisers or maybe aren't as quite as healthy as the people at Avexia, that talk is different from what I present here. Because the members here are, like you talked about Blue Zones, and I think we can get into that a little bit because I have thoughts. But when we talk about Blue Zones, this truly is, you look at the membership here, you look at you guys, and these are people who care about their health, take care of themselves, and are really well-informed and well-educated. So that's like the perfect place for me to come in at a much higher level. Like you know my talks, right? Yeah. We go into data. I show you numbers, and we talk about these things, and sometimes we argue about these things, and that's the process. I'm used to fighting over ideas in science. That's what we do. Yeah. And, we've done that in our talks. We've gotten into, discussions about and disagreements about things, and that's fine. That's part of the process. But I think this is a great place to showcase what the world of science is discovering about aging and kind of to sift through the noise to find what I believe is real. Because there's a lot of stuff going on out there that is not ethical in my mind, and I think that we cut through that.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. But before, this is like the setup for you, sort of introduce you to our audience. Mm-hmm. We're gonna have at least 4 more episodes on that sort of follow the workshops you've done here on the actual science of healthy aging. we were sort of want to get into your mindset and like, so let's take us way back. Like, why was this a pursuit initially in college? Like, what was it about this subject matter that inspired you?
Yeah. So I mean, when I started off, I was a fish guy. Like I studied fish. I was doing marine biology.
Yeah.
I was going to school in Los Angeles. We spent lots of time on boats in Baja California, and I just fish are cool.
Yeah,
like I still I still dig fish.
Do you scuba dive?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got certified as a diver at 13, so that's why we connected, I think.
Yeah, I scuba, snorkel, and growing up in Southern California, there's like lots of opportunities there. But, I got into a really good fish research program as a master's student and started doing genetics of fish back then. And again, was studying with really great colleagues and friends, fish all over Mexico and stuff. It was just so much fun. And, it got to the point where, thinking about the future and, what do I want to do going forward? And one of the thoughts is like, well, what's my job going to be in the future? Can I live the life I want to live and still be a fish biologist? And so at that point, decided to, as we say in the field, go human. So took the work that I did in genetics related to fish and went into what we call a postdoc program after getting a PhD in studying fish genetics at UC Davis. So I studied ecology. Said, let's take that knowledge and go into human health. So I went into cancer genetics.
I got to ask a question on that. I mean, think about this. Back then, there was no internet, right? I mean, so you were doing some hardcore research, and that must have been such a different way of thinking back in those days.
Yeah, well, I mean, the things when you did research, right, you went to the library and pulled journals off of shelves and opened them and read paper. Right? Like that was what you did. And so you had to, and the thing is, if you're at a big university and you had a great library, you could find all the journals you wanted. But if not, you had to like drive across town. And sometimes I had to go to UCLA to like get the journals I needed, and now the internet, most things are available there, although sometimes there's a paywall. So you have to deal with that or have a friend who can get it for you or whatever.
Did the quality of the library dictate which college you went to?
No, it didn't. Actually, the research dictated that. Okay. But it happened to be when I went to UC Davis, I had the really great library. So I, no worries. And that's when the internet started to, become a thing. But no, back in those days, we worked in the lab, right? I ran gels and pulled all-nighters and, all that stuff in a molecular lab, but then applied it to, fish research. And same thing moving on into cancer research, moved to a program which was focused on epidemiology, looking for risk factors related at that time to colorectal cancer. And so through that, learned a lot about human health and human genetics. And at that point, when you finish your postdoc, you're like, I'm looking for a job. Right. And I was lucky enough at that point, because I wanted to move back to the Bay Area, was lucky enough to be accepted into a faculty position where we were studying longevity. And I joined a group of researchers called the Longevity Consortium.
Or was that just like by chance that's the study? Or
I had colleagues at UCSF who I was talking to about jobs in cancer epidemiology, and it turned out they made a connection to this other group that was studying aging and longevity. And so we just kind of hit it off, and they said, oh, you should really be studying genetics of aging and longevity. And so they brought me in as faculty. And how this stuff works is when you're a faculty, they say, we'll support you for 3 years, but your job is to go out, create a research program, get your own funding. And if not, that's it. You're done. And so I'm still here. So I've been successful.
There's a capitalist element to that too.
Oh, absolutely. Like I think the image is people like to think like scientists, we sit around and talk about cool ideas and data all day. And yeah, we do a little bit of that. We spend most of our time talking about money. And funding and how hard it is to get.
Hey,
and
real quick,
chasing funding.
Explain to those of us that don't know, what is epidemiology?
Right. So epidemiology is, in essence, the study of health patterns related to human health and disease. So whether or not it's epidemic means that you're studying the prevalence, meaning how much disease of any type, so the prevalence of disease and the incidence of disease. So how much of a disease is there now, and how is that growing over time? You know, do we see a rise in some sort of condition in like obesity or something like that? So it's the study of health in populations.
But I didn't even make that connection, but it seems obvious. Epidemics.
Right. So, epidemic.
The study
right?
of epidemics.
Well, an epidemic is when you say something is something, let's say it's a disease, is occurring at a much higher level or at a faster rate than you would sort of expect based on, normal risk factors.
Right.
So for instance, there's like a much higher increase in colorectal cancer in younger people now than there has been in the past 10 or 20 years.
Wow.
And epidemiologists are trying to figure that out. So as an epidemiologist, you're trying to figure out what it is that is causing that. And that's tricky, right? Because you can't identify the cause of something without doing like an interventional trial. So a lot of what we do is collect lots of data and find correlations and patterns and try and interpret what is like the actual cause of something.
Gotcha. So when you look at longevity and health span, which is your area of expertise, you're trying to, was there something in the patterns where, in other words, was mortality going down? Was there something about, was it more just like, how do we help people live longer, or let's study why they're not living as long? Or some combination.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. And that sometimes I like to distinguish a bit between people who are studying longevity and lifespan as a goal versus people who are studying health span as a goal. So having as many healthy years of life as possible.
Right.
And that may not involve an extension of lifespan, but it's an extension of health span.
Right.
And it's not to make those in opposition to each other, but sometimes that just happens naturally. But when we first started in this longevity consortium, and it's still around today as a research as a research program that's funded through the National Institute on Aging, it was to understand what is it about people who lived to 100, 105, 110. Was there something special about them that, was it genetic? Was it some other thing in their molecular biology, cellular biology, in their lifestyle choices that was related to that long life? And so that's a program that's still ongoing. A lot of discoveries are coming out of it. We could get into that in one of our talks. But what intrigued me along the way was really the idea that we should really be focusing on health span, like making people healthy today.
Right. Yeah.
Because, frankly, a lot of people living to long age, that they could be unhealthy, right? Just achieving a long, 115 years, 120 years is not a goal unless those are healthy years.
Right.
And so to me, I saw that the way we can have a greater impact on people's lives is to understand those who are healthiest at older ages.
Right.
And to understand why that is. And there are different ways of getting there.
Your lectures must vary between your audience, right? For example, Vexia, we're a very active facility. So if you were to do with your lectures here, as opposed to going to a senior assisted living home or something like that, right? It's just, explain to us the difference on your lectures. It's almost the same lecture, if you will, but different because the audience is active versus a non-active audience. But is the material the same that you go over?
The foundation is the same, but then it digresses quickly from there. So the foundation of being active here, that's optimizing exercise, a good diet, and sleep, right? Those are pillars. And one of the last presentation I gave, one of the trainers here was like, well, how about community, right? Learning from the Blue Zone, and I would absolutely add that to those 4 pillars. Like, let's add community, human connection to that. But when we present here, what we're doing is we're doing that deep dive into what does the latest science say about types of exercise for achieving maximum health. And everybody's got different goals, right? For some people, it's weight loss. And so we know what kinds of intervention exercise might benefit your weight loss. But for others, it might be mobility, it might be strength, it might be some sort of functional output. It might just be feeling and looking better. But whatever that is, we know now through good data what the personalized ways of exercising are to achieve those goals. So I'm here to inform, and you and your trainers are here to translate and actually carry it out. And that's why I think the members here are already healthy. They don't need to be told to have a good diet, to exercise. Probably still need to be told to sleep better. But this allows me to sort of dive deeper into the data and again present numbers, right? And we look at the numbers and we discuss the numbers and we say, this is why strength training is better for, people in a certain group, whether it's, somebody who is looking to improve their physical stamina, but also of a certain age. And so, as we age, strength training becomes more and more important. We can get into the details on that. And I don't think that that's something that that a lot of people know about. This is like fairly new in the health research world. And so what we do in research is we're diving even deeper. So we look at muscle, we look at the genes that are expressed in muscle, we look at how the mitochondria function in muscle, all rolling up to the healthy individual, protons to people. And I present that here. Your members can handle, our members can handle details because they're educated, they're informed, and want to know this stuff. And people write to me afterwards and they're like, please tell me more about this, the thing that you talked about, that slide, whatever it is. And so I love giving the talks here because we get into the details.
Yeah.
And can then, I think, hopefully members can see something and say, oh, I'm going to change the way I go about exercising, lifestyle, or whatever based on the information. So I'm not here to sell you something.
Yeah.
I'm here to show you what the data show, and I do my best to show you the best data. Because if I had a message, I could find data anywhere to support what I'm trying to sell you.
Yeah,
but that's not what we're doing here, right?
I want to get into sort of what makes a good study versus not. One of the things we loved about you, Greg, is you had nothing to sell. So many people come to us and say, hey, I'd like to do this talk because I want to get customers, I want to get clients, or I want to sell something. And we just appreciate your impartial, agnostic view of that. And you're just here to present the data and help people live longer, happier lives, healthier lives.
Yeah, what is your take on I'm feeling like our society wants a shortcut to get healthier, right? This GLP-1, all these things that are coming out, and it's a big trend going on. And I see it as a problem in my mind because people don't want to do the proper work, right? They think they can take a pill, take a shot, and lose weight, but that's not. But as I say, I think that's very detrimental to their health. You can see in some people that they lose the muscle, their faces are drooping, they're losing all the muscle mass, and they're having this complete adverse effect. But they're feeling good because they're losing weight. What is your thoughts on things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky.
It's crazy.
It's tricky, right? And so I always give these talks and say there is no magic pill for aging, right? It's all the lifestyle things we talked about. Having a healthy lifestyle, which includes being active, exercising. It doesn't have to be at a fancy gym. You've got a great gym. I come here all the time. So it's helped me in many, many ways. So I appreciate that. Thank you. and I appreciate the members and just this community. But to come back to your question, GLP-1's an interesting example because it is helping people, right? It's helping people. It's originally meant to help people with diabetes, right? And it's helping people lose weight. It's helping people be healthier. But every cure does have side effects. And I think one of the things that needs to be addressed is how, as you put it, muscle is also lost, right? When you lose weight, you don't just lose fat. It doesn't matter if it's an extreme diet, caloric restriction, or GLP-1 induced caloric restriction, essentially, and other molecular changes it induces. That is, you're losing muscle and fat, right? And the nightmare scenario is somebody who's overweight, loses a lot of weight based on these drugs, and either goes off them because they can't afford them anymore, or just, there's a reason why they go off them or can't get prescriptions anymore, and then has a rebound effect, right? Because a lot of dieting, you experience a rebound effect. You gain the weight back. But the issue here is if you've lost a good proportion of your muscle during that weight loss and you put weight back on, you're putting fat back on. And so you've actually exchanged your previous weight, which was both muscle and fat, with all fat, right?
So this is an important message right there.
And I think that's an issue. So I think that, people who are on these, and I'm not a physician, so I'm not here giving medical advice. So let's make that clear. But the data, I think, play this out, is that if you look at these drugs, which again are transforming lives, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them, but you have to understand like what the limits are of them.
Correct.
And then deal with that. So I think the evidence is showing that a healthy resistance training program or something that in support of these drugs will help you maintain a healthy physical body as you lose the weight.
Yeah.
And I think that's like really important, rather than because I'll tell you now, the next frontier, or it's already been emerging in the pharmaceutical world, is muscle sparing drugs.
Right.
So now you need a pill to save you from the pill that saved you from the pill before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still think there are places for these types of medications. And I'm thinking like bed rest. People go in to the hospital with serious conditions. They're in bed for a while. Having a drug to spare muscle could be life-saving. For people who come out of the hospital, 2 weeks of bed rest, they're never the same again.
No atrophy.
No atrophy, right? So I think that goal is 100% important.
I agree.
And if that could benefit people who are also trying to lose weight and maintain muscle, I'm all for that.
I haven't heard about that one.
I ran into a member. I didn't even tell you this. I ran into one of our members who's been another OG member, and she has been coming religiously since the beginning. But she was only doing classes, right? She was only doing HIIT and these boot camps type classes. A woman, in her early 50s. And she was dieting well, good nutrition and so forth, but she was plateauing, right? She couldn't get to this, and I think a lot of it had to do with hormones and menopause and postmenopause. She went on what she called a microdose GLP, and went out of the classes onto our strength floor. She completely switched from doing classes to strength. And the reason I bring this up is because I started talking to her because I hadn't seen her in a while, and I looked at her and she was completely transformed. It was she had the body of a 35-year-old.
By incorporating the strength.
By incorporating the strength. And a microdose of the GLP.
Because the body can only filter so much, right? You don't need, people have this misconception of the more, the better, where in theory, it just sits in the liver. If it doesn't produce, it doesn't work through the system. Is that
that happens with a lot of nutritional supplements and things.
Yeah.
You're essentially making expensive pee.
Yeah.
Because it just gets washed out, right? And
a hell of expensive piss.
Yeah, and you don't even know what's in the thing that you're taking. Anyway, so I digress. But but your story is an important one, because I think what we show in the lecture series, right, is what happens to our muscle as we age, right? So when we're young and kind of have somewhat perfectly balanced physiology, our muscle is constantly turning over, like our bones turn over, right? That's like you're replacing old tissue with new tissue. So bones turn over, but so does muscle, throughout the day. And so what happens is you get this, nice balance of building and breakdown, and that happens over the day. But as we age, the factors that are related to building the muscle, those become attenuated. Those just aren't as upregulated. Those just aren't as available to your cells as they once were when you were younger. So that's why as we age, muscle mass is lost. And the only way to build that is through resistance training. So you definitely need protein. You need protein to build muscle.
Right.
But you're not going to protein your way out of that age-related decline or atrophy or sarcopenia. And then if you play it out till somebody's in their 80s or 90s, you reach what's called sarcopenia, and that starts to impact mobility and function. And by then, it's never too late. But if you could avoid getting there through resistance training, that you should be incorporating that into your exercise. And this is what the member you just talked about did.
Yeah, I preach that. I mean, I read an article, must be 10 years ago in WebMD. They asked me to write something on women over 45. Is bodybuilding type mentality training beneficial for them? And so I was able to really extrapolate on that and how important strength training is. It's almost like a non-negotiable, especially now. I can't wait for the podcast we talk about women in menopause, right? These poor women, when they start going through that period, their estrogen and everything just collapses on them, and they don't know how to. I think the research has shown that I think in 2023 they just started digging into women in menopause and how to cure, if you will, that portion of it.
Or treat the symptoms of it at least during that menopausal transition.
Yeah, correct.
But
strength training is the way to go. Non-negotiable.
And it's something it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And I think that the data play out, and I'll show this in my next talk too. I shared with you a really nice, really comprehensive review article on like the role of exercise in aging and the modalities that are most critical when you're aging, and we can share that with members and the listeners of this podcast. But the idea is that the training you did when you were younger is not the training you need when you're older, right? So I think a lot of high cardio intensity exercise is something that you do when you're younger. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but as you shift towards older age and go through that transition, a switch to more resistance training and more strength training is warranted because you're trying to maintain that muscle mass, which is critical. Because what happens, right, when you're exercising or you're out going on a long walk or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be in the gym. You're taking in oxygen, you're delivering oxygen, and you're utilizing oxygen in the muscles that you then exhale. So the thing that declines most rapidly with aging in that process is your muscle's ability to utilize that oxygen. So that's a matter of muscle mass and muscle quality.
Yeah.
Meaning, you're with age, the nerve fibers that connect to your muscle are deteriorating and atrophying. So you need exercise to maintain those or rebuild those. Your mitochondria, which are the things that respire in your muscle, those are also declining in number and atrophying. So by doing the resistance training, you are actually rebuilding those things, which are the things that you need to make use of that oxygen that you're breathing in.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. What are there's I remember 3 levels of measurements to measure healthy aging. Is there certain tests that you recommend or that science has proven? You
mean, so we're getting back to epidemiology, right?
Yes.
So like what are the best what are the best predictors of how long you're going to live and how healthy you're going to be? The first one is your walking speed.
Interesting.
Your normal walking speed.
How fast do you walk, Scott? Do you walk pretty fast?
I walk pretty fast.
Yeah. Have you measured that before?
Yeah. I've never actually measured the speed.
Yeah.
I probably should.
We could do that. We could do it. We'll go outside right now. All you need is a timer, right?
Right, exactly.
Use your phone.
Exactly.
How about you, Warren?
I haven't measured it, but I find I'm always ahead of the people when I walk. That's
the thing.
If I'm at an airport, I'm like always, maybe because I like to rush and get to the gate, but mentally, I think I walk at a fast pace. I think we went for a walk one time, and you made a comment to me outside, and you said, you're walking too fast.
Slow down.
I don't know what it is, man.
And it's your normal pace, right? So it's not like I'm late for the bus.
Something.
Yeah, I got to get to my gate or whatever.
I'm always in a rush, though, Scott.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. You notice that about?
Yeah.
I'm just always in a rush to do things. I don't know what that is. Maybe I want to live longer or I want to get to the end. I don't
Maximize
know.
your time.
Maximize my time, yeah. Sorry.
Walking is such an elegant measure of strength, cardiopulmonary health, neuromuscular health. It kind of ties it all together. I mean, humans have been walking, for hundreds of thousands of years, and we evolved walking, so it's fundamental to us. And it's our walking speed decline as we age, in 60s and 70s. That's when it becomes really critical, because the inability to walk is telling you something about all of those things together, neuromuscular and strength and cardiopulmonary health. So that's why we pay attention to walking speed. The other things we'll talk about in future episodes are strength. So like grip strength is a really good predictor. And then so is your VO2 max. And that's something that's, I think, becoming more popular in the research field for sure, but also in fitness settings.
Yeah, the VO2 max is just the oxygen when you breathe.
Yeah, explain what the VO2 max
so
is.
VO2 max is the direct measure of the volume of oxygen you take in based on your body weight over time.
We have that now. Our lead trainer, fitness manager, has we have the VO2
That's
max.
right. We're doing VO2 max testing diagnostics for members right now.
I did mine.
Yeah, I did mine too.
So when we
mine was good, not excellent, and so now I know what to work on.
Yep, I've same here. So well, maybe we could redo ours and have a whole episode about that.
I look forward to it. So VO2 max, grip strength, and walking. Any other?
Tons of them, but I think those are really good ones, and don't discount in all of this. Don't discount the critically important role of recovery and sleep in all of this, and that's like sort of the fourth of our lecture series as we get into recovery and sleep, because a lot of the recovery from the day of exercise and activity is taking place while you sleep. And it's not negotiable. Healthy sleep is really important. And when we get into like what happens at different stages of sleep and how each stage is important for physical recovery as well as emotional recovery and cognitive functioning and memory formation. So we'll get into all that in detail, so stay tuned. But the idea is that you cannot have a good health program without also having a good recovery and rest program built into it.
I'm sure nutrition slides in there somewhere too.
It does too. I kind of avoid that one. I'm not a nutritionist, and frankly, I think we know what we need to know in a lot of ways. We know what dietary patterns are always associated with the best health outcomes. Right. It's we all know this, right? It's eating real foods, lots of grains and vegetables, healthy proteins.
No processed foods.
Healthy proteins, cut out the processed foods as much as possible. Frankly, we know this stuff.
You know what's crazy? I had a kids fitness business, and we had a nutritionist all over the franchises. And we took a McDonald's hamburger, or the nutritionist had one. It was 2 years old, and it looked like it just came off of the belt. The rest, I don't know what you call them when the meats come off the little conveyor belt, if you will. We got new wrappers for it, and we would ask the parents how old they think this burger was, and it was literally 2 years old, and it looked like it was crazy. And we put that in our body. That's not processed food you were talking about.
Exactly.
It's so bizarre.
Exactly.
Yeah, for real. Eat real food.
Eat real food.
Yeah. Great. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about data collection, research, because we hear so many. This report came out, which contradicts this report, which contradicts this study, and those of us laymen don't know what to make sense of, where we put credibility and reliability in the data that we see. So can you talk about it from a research scientist standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a super important question. I appreciate you bringing this up. And in fact, you guys have been to so many of my talks. I bet you can answer this question.
I know, right?
Yeah, right. I think that with the internet, there's so much bad information out there, and it's not just in the health world; it's all over the place, right? And so, sifting out what is real information from what is bad information is so hard. It's so hard, and I can't tell you how much I get, because I look at a lot of health information out there. Every day there's some new, this study found that, something is the cure for something, or you need this, this supplement or this piece of fruit or whatever it is to live forever. And so, and then that goes away, and the next day there's a new thing. And then the next day there's a new thing. And science cannot be moving that quickly, right? If we're going to find things that are real. And so the idea is that how do you sift through that? Like what is it that a reader who is can make informed decisions and critique this information? And so this is how I do it is I look at these articles with a sense of skepticism every time and say like, okay, well, where was the study done? Is it done in humans? There's a lot of studies done in mice and other things are reported as a clinical study, right? And so blueberries made make you live forever. And it's like, well, no, that was a study in mice, and it was a bad study in mice. Okay, so is it in humans? Also, what kind of study is it, right? So in science, we do, and sometimes we do an intervention, meaning we will find people and we will randomize them to getting a certain diet or a certain drug or a certain behavior. And we'll have what's called a placebo group who doesn't have that diet or that behavior or that intervention. It's called a clinical trial. You do this a lot for medicine. And that allows you to identify whether or not that diet, intervention, drug, or whatever it is causing the outcome you're interested in. Do people on that have, developed diabetes or not? Is the intervention protective for, a particular outcome like cancer or dementia? Those are hard studies to do because they're expensive. It's hard to do this in large numbers of people, and it's hard to do them for a long term. So if you're studying a long term thing like longevity, you can't ever do that study because the study lasts longer than the people who are doing the study can live, right?
Right.
So, but it is the gold standard for identifying the cause of an outcome. So read your recent report to see, is this an interventional study? Is it a trial? Was there randomization? A lot of the studies that I do are called correlational because that's the only way of doing some of this work in large numbers of people over long durations. Like, how are you going to do a study of grip strength at age 50 to see how that impacts your function at age 75? You cannot do that in a clinical trial setting. You can't make some people grip and some people not grip and follow them for 25 years. You need to do what's called an observational study. And that's a lot of what we do. So we study thousands and thousands of people, collect lots of data on them, from walking speed to grip strength to VO2, down to muscle biopsies and maybe what's happening, at the mitochondrial function in the muscle, up to genetics, which is what I do. And we put all those things together and we run analyses where we correlate certain things with certain outcomes. So why is it that people who walk faster live longer? We know that's an association. But we're always thinking that, is it because those people are healthier in some other way? So it's not the walking speed. They're healthier in some other way that's related to the outcome of longevity and healthy lifespan. So that's where the epidemiology comes in. So then what we do is we adjust. So we run statistical analyses. We adjust for other health factors that we've also collected data on. So maybe those people have a healthier diet. We incorporate that into our analysis to try and isolate it being walking speed, not the healthy diet. We correlate, sleep and, underlying health conditions into all these analyses in order to try and isolate the association between the thing we're predicting, strength, walking speed, and the outcome, healthy longevity, and try and rule out all the other things that could be related to both. That's called confounding. And now that confounding is the thing that relates both of those. A classic example is if you have an association between, let's say, alcohol and cancer, that's totally confounded by smoking status because that is mediated or related to smoking status. So once you also incorporate smoking into that analysis, that association between alcohol and cancer becomes weaker because it's actually through smoking. So that's what we think about with confounding is, how well can we isolate that predictor as related to that outcome? We can't ever eliminate everything. And that's what we call unmeasured confounding, but we can do our best. And we do that in every analysis. And so that when I come here and tell you that walking speed is associated with that outcome of healthy longevity, we're able to say confidently it is related, even though we've accounted for body mass index and underlying health conditions and lots of other things which could also be related to that outcome. And still we find the association. So that's how we operationalize it at the epidemiology level.
Wow.
And but to get back to your point, Scott, the idea that a publication can say something causes the outcome. A lot of times they're taking studies, observations from these correlation studies and calling them a cause.
Right.
And it's not the cause. It's a correlation.
So is there no absolute truth in the research field? Because there's no way to sort of create a vacuum of confounding?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think that we can get closer, truth, right? We can get closer and closer to the truth in multiple ways. One of the ways, and this is why I like in our presentations to present large studies, especially large studies that are called meta-analyses. So one way to find the truth is to repeat the study multiple times in different settings, different contexts, different people, different researchers, and all find the same thing. Right. And so that means that walking speed analysis, I'll just keep coming back to that. That analysis that I present in my slides and we can have on our next talk, actually, we can get into the details of what a study looks like and what confounding is. But that was a meta-analysis of many different studies and their conclusions.
Right.
So I'm not cherry picking one study to say, look, that's the thing that I'm trying to sell you that's associated with the thing that you want. It's an agnostic look at all the studies which have looked at the same question, and we combine all those results to get to one effect. So across all the studies, some studies might show a big effect of walking speed and healthy longevity. Some studies might show a small effect of that. But combining all of those, we get closer to, I guess, as you put it, the truth.
Yeah.
At least that's the best we can do. So in my talks, when I show these big complex figures, it's because we're looking at 20 studies or 40 studies and basing our recommendations on all of those studies, not a single study which might be biased because it's too small or not well designed.
Right.
And that's my job as an epidemiologist, is to sift through those things and present to you what the most robust evidence is. And I take that very seriously when I speak in public.
Yeah, sounds like it. How often do the studies change? Are you constantly looking at different research, or is it the same studies that you're studying, or?
Right. So I think one of the things that's very interesting is as technology changes, we're able to look at more things.
Yeah.
Right. So let's use like sleep as an example. Before the advent of wearables, like sleep research was based on questionnaires.
Yeah.
Right. And that's because that's the best you can do. How many hours of sleep did you get last night? What time did you go to bed? Did you wake up? Those sorts of things. And there are very good questionnaires for assessing sleep. So I respect that field. But now, 15, 20 years ago, like wearables came in, and we were putting wearables. I'm doing this because we had these little watches before there were iWatches and all these things. Or Apple Watches. We were putting these on study participants and able to start looking at objective measures of sleep over multiple nights.
Yeah, I remember when the polar heart rate monitors came out. It was such a fascinating time of our lives, because on fitness equipment, same thing. Technology changes and science gets different. The studies show that cardiovascular really helps with heart rate, and so they came out with the strap and the watch, and it was like this big phenomenon on watching your heart rate. But that was like in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And you fast forward 25, 30 years, it's just come such a long ways. But it's information that, it's interesting to me because the information was always there, we just never penetrated it.
Or you weren't able to collect it.
You weren't able to collect it.
You weren't able to measure it, right?
Yeah.
So the wearables gave us better measures of sleep. And then our studies, we also look at polysomnography. So we look at what's happening with the brain waves. And so then we're able to even do better studies of sleep, which is why now I can, in my talks, come and tell you, during slow wave sleep, that's the phase that your body is upregulating growth hormone to repair muscle and bone and other things. And during REM sleep, emotional recovery is happening. But it's all because the technology allows us to measure things at a more precise level and at a deeper level than we were ever able to before.
And another interesting point that I just thought about is extrapolate this 20, 30 years from now, because these companies, whether it's Whoop or Aura, are collecting data. They're going to have their own studies in some ways of longevity. Like if I bought an Aura ring in 2022, what is my lifestyle and health span and longevity looking like in 2048? You know what I mean? Who knows what's gonna happen.
These companies
it's really
are
interesting.
Yeah, are definitely aggregating all this data and looking for patterns and, maybe looking for the next, algorithm to, provide you something better on their app or another product, whatever it is. But like all your data are being analyzed.
So based on our ecosystem that we have with Avexia, your lectures that you've done, Are you laser focused into our audience on how you're lecturing?
Yeah.
Like what the topics are, right?
Yeah. And you started off this talk with that. So you're like, how do you tailor the talk to the audience? And so, your question was like, well, if you were at in a forum that had maybe older people who weren't at a health club, I would be recommending different things. I'd be recommending, still strength training, but maybe not on the gym floor, but other modalities of strength training like chair stands.
Yeah.
Chair stands are like incredibly predictive of lifespan and longevity. And it's all you need is a chair. You don't need fancy equipment. I would emphasize mobility. Like if somebody's having a hard time walking, they need to focus on that before you start, jacking up weight on a machine, right? So meet people where they are and help them understand, kind of where their health is and what they can do to help get to the next level of health.
Yeah.
Right. And so in some people, it's like, just get out and walk, work on your mobility, work on your walking, work on distance, work on your balance. Yeah. And so those are kind of the messages I bring. And I also bring things that aren't gym health club focused. I bring things that are, again, practical recommendations that you can do in a room like this. You can do wall stands. You can do, arm related exercises. You can do chair stands. Those are simple things anybody can do. And they don't have to feel intimidated because you got to go to a gym and, put on spandex.
So are we living longer right now?
Yes.
We are living longer. Average men age is what, 75 around there?
Sure. That's a good question. I don't know those numbers here. I would say that we are living longer. There's a question about, are we healthier?
Mm-hmm. Are we happier?
Are we happier and all those things? I think that in general, like we are healthier longer. Different countries have different longevity. They have different, health disparities and prevalence of health conditions. And we could argue why,
right.
But in general, we are getting healthier.
Yeah, I definitely know stress kills because I had shingles opening up infection. I don't remember that. It was a serious damage, but it's all stress related stuff, right? I mean, you could be the healthiest person, but if the cortisol levels spikes up.
Yeah. I mean some of it's stress. So, a little bit of stress is good for you.
A little bit of stress is good for me. He stresses me out sometimes. Our business partner.
I'm
the good part of your stress.
Exactly.
Well, so that intervention is the next podcast, right?
Right.
It's like
That's right.
But they're going to sit between you guys.
Yeah.
No, but a little bit of stress is good for you, right? But I exercised this morning. That's stress.
Yeah.
But that's the stress that's good for you because it upregulates all the protective and molecular repair factors that your body needs, right? So we've got these things called heat shock proteins, and they're named that because in worms they're upregulated when you heat up a worm. How do you stress a worm? You turn up the temperature, and that upregulates all these factors called heat shock proteins. And what those do is they go out into the cell and they fix damaged proteins. So they either put them back in the right shape or they tell the cell these are no good, get rid of them. And so that's what a little bit of stress does. A lot of stress, bad news. Your worms die, or you get all sorts of chronic conditions. So there's a whole balance there. So exercise is good stress. That's a little bit of stress.
I like to ride motorcycles sometimes a little faster than I probably should. Would that fall under the good stress or the bad stress?
Are you wearing a helmet?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
I don't know. It sounds like it makes you happy.
One of the thrills.
It's not stressful.
One of the thrills about it is just sort of pushing towards that edge, right?
Yeah.
I don't feel stressed necessarily, but there's got to be some sort of like.
Well, I'm sure there's still some sort of like anxiety there.
But
right?
that's the dopamine you want, right?
Yeah.
That's looking for that dopamine.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned cortisol, and I think that's a thing that's kind of gained a lot of I think notoriety lately, this whole cortisol face thing, and now cortisol is this enemy and everybody's trying to remove cortisol, and it's like, no, cortisol is an important signaling factor. It's a really important hormone. It's there for a reason.
Survival.
But just with anything, like you can get too much of it, and that's related to this chronic stress that you're talking about.
Right.
But cortisol, is something that is declines at night and then peaks throughout the night. and hits its peak as you're waking up. It's important for you to wake up and be vigilant and all those things. So cortisol is important. It's just too much is a bad thing.
And I think same, like to your point, it's how many people wake up and the first thing they do is they go right to their device. They don't even get out of bed. They reach right to the side table to open up their phone instead of just really clearing their mind. That'll help tremendously.
And it's both the wake up, but it's also the going to bed procedure. And we talk about this in the lecture series, but it just like you prepare for anything else in life, you put on your outfit to go to the gym, or you dress up to go to work, or you prepare, a meal in the kitchen. You also need to prepare for going to sleep. Because, sleep is really important. I can't say that enough. And it's not something that is trivial, meaning good preparation can lead to better sleep. Yeah. Meaning, so it's mindset and it's physical setting. So it's the set and setting of sleep. So are you preparing your mind for sleep? Are you turning off your device?
It's almost like landing a plane.
It's for sure. That's a really nice analogy. You kind of get the landing gear down and all that stuff. You get the flaps out. Right. Are you eating at the right time? So there's a cute 3-2-1 rule. So don't eat a heavy meal 3 hours before you go to bed. 2 hours before bed, stop all stressful activity. Stop that doom scrolling. Put down your work. Dim your lights. Make a nice setting. And 1 hour before, no screens. Yeah. Right? Because that blue light attenuates your body's ability to produce melatonin by 45 minutes to an hour. So those simple rules. But you got to prepare for that, right? You have to think about it ahead of time. So I think just like you were saying, the wake up, it's also that process beforehand.
Yeah.
Those are simple things. And I get some people are shift workers and have a hard lifestyle. So you got to do what you can do.
Right.
But if you have the luxury of having that time, use it well.
Yeah, I like that. I like to go to bed early. But I to your point, I premeditate my bedtime. Meaning I get rid of all devices. I like to meditate before I go to bed as well. And I just slowly sleep in darkness. I fall right to sleep. It's beautiful.
There you go. You're gonna give them you're gonna give the next sleep talk.
I might.
Right there.
I'll just start sleeping.
It's actually one of my favorite talks of yours because I've learned a lot about set and setting. I've got similar rituals. One of the things I'm working on, I get up, I go to the bathroom a lot during the night, unfortunately. And so trying to, push back my last liquid, before bedtime, it's still tough,
Yeah.
Because, having to go to the bathroom wakes you up out of a solid sleep. And sometimes I never get back to that quality sleep.
Absolutely, yeah, and that becomes a bigger concern or a bigger problem as we age, right? It's called nocturia. It's getting up to go to the bathroom at night, and there are multiple causes of it. One is knowing when you're drinking too much late before bedtime. Yeah. You gotta do business at some point. Right. But also there could be medication related issues. There could be comorbidities, so health related issues. There could be physical obstruction. So if it's a chronic problem, see your doctor because there might be a reason that's easily addressed. Yeah. So medications can cause this issue. But first thing I would think about is probably don't down a bunch of big gulps before you go to bed.
So, Greg, when you're talking to people similar to people like the ones at our club that are, at the top of their game, very conscientious about health and fitness, what are some of the things that they're asking you? What are the things you've identified about them, when you're doing your talks in terms of how to present to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get a lot of interest in people just wanting to see the slides, right? So I make those things freely available to everybody. There's nothing proprietary in there. But then I will have a lot of members come to me wanting to talk about a specific thing. Like, we talk about the timing of when you exercise and, kind of like how to maximize your benefits, whether it's strength or endurance or something like that. And they'll want to know more about that. Mm-hmm. So I'll say, here's the evidence, here are the papers I refer to. So some people want to see the actual data and I'll send them the publication and we'll talk about it and people will catch me in person or whatever it is. So whether it's here or to the general public, I'm always getting people emailing me wanting to know a specific thing. Because it's, what I love is, and what I want people to do, and also to help me make better talks, is to see how all of this information is personal to them. And if it's not, help me understand what you want to hear and what you need to hear. But also when it is personal to you and you want to know more about it, I can share that information with you or direct you to somebody who's best suited to helping, answer your question.
Right.
Because sometimes the best person to answer the question is a trainer or their doctor, or something like that. But I think that it's not, I don't drop in and say words and leave, right? It's a relationship that we have. And I learn, from the people I give talks to, because there are smart people in that audience. And I'm always worried, that I'm going to say something wrong, or say something that, has, people have other viewpoints. So I think it's not just me speaking. It's a relationship.
Well, Greg, we really appreciate you and all that you bring to our members and to the club and to the community at large. And we hope a lot of people get to see this podcast. Tell us what we can look forward to. This is part of our series on healthy aging with our professor of healthy aging, as we've nominated you. What can we look forward to in future episodes?
Yeah, so I think that and we've alluded to this in today's podcast, that we're going to do really deep, detailed dives with data into the role, what the research is on strength and health and healthy aging. Lot of really great information, but also with like practical guidance. It's not just I'm going to show you figures and walk out of here. We're going to have practical guidance there. The one after that, we're going to focus on the VO2 and cardiovascular health. So that's this measure of fitness and what we know about that. You talked about how's research changing. Now that we can measure VO2, like we know a lot more about the science of cardiopulmonary and health. And then the third episode that we have planned so far is be a really detailed, deep discussion of sleep and recovery.
Right.
Because like I said before, there's no daytime you and nighttime you. You are you 24 hours, whether or not you're asleep or at the gym or taking a hike or at work.
Hey, Greg, one question. Is there a common theme among audience members when you talk that they're all sort of coming to you for, like a common something that's happening to them that they'd like to get more clarity on?
Sure, and there are many things, and these are a lot of things I'm dealing with, and probably everybody in this room is dealing with. Common things include pain as we age, stiffness. Stiffness is a big one. Sleep problems, that's huge. We talked about nocturia earlier. That's related to it, and just kind of low energy levels. These are the things I hear about all the time. So pain and stiffness, low energy levels, poor sleep. And, this stuff's all kind of related. You think about, part of the recovery process is to restore that energy, is to attenuate pain and stiffness. And so these things all become related, but these are like general themes, and you'll hear that that's been a problem with aging forever. I hear about that a lot here.
I know Scott and I talked about it, and maybe we're going to bring it up in a different episode, but for me, my low testosterone as I age, my ED is a problem, and that's, I think men, at least I do, it's sacred and they don't want to bring it up. And so we're stuck in this area of like, what do we do, right? And we want to get it out there. So that's probably a good thing about healthy aging, right? About ED and testosterone, I would imagine. It was but we don't talk about it. It's a shame.
Yeah, and testosterone for men and women is critical for bodily function and bodily health. And that's a really important question, right? So we know about the role of estrogen and that the menopausal transition and how critical it is to understand that process, but we don't really know about this in men, and part of it is because I don't think we talk about it.
Exactly.
So that's absolutely really a vital point that we should open up about.
Yeah.
And also and
we will.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I think that I don't want to come across as saying that there is no role for medicine or treatments that are involve medicines and things like that. It's just that when you replace a healthy lifestyle with those things, then that's where I am challenged with seeing the benefit. But sometimes, if you are low in a particular nutrient or something like that, and the only way is to support it through a specific nutrient or drug, like I'm all for that.
Right. I mean, I can be the healthiest person, but if I have ED, right, then I'm going to have a really low self-esteem. And so how do I fix that? There has to be some type of a supplement or something to offset that. So I'm running on 100%.
Yeah, exactly. Assuming there is something that you and your doctor can find that is going to address that, you should definitely pursue all those things.
Yeah.
You're just not going to replace an entirely healthy lifestyle with a couple pills.
Right. I agree with that. I wish there was a magic pill. I'd be the best customer.
I do have one question before we start to wrap up, Greg. Where do you sort of draw the line between research scientist and medical doctor? You know what I mean? Because you have, in some ways, more information than doctors do, but you're not a doctor. Like, how do you sort of ride that line?
It's it is interesting. Some doctors are also excellent researchers, so that's the winning combination.
The perfect storm.
People with an MD and a PhD. I mean, physicians aren't trained to do research, and they're very, can be very good technically at what they do, but don't have the time or the wherewithal to understand the breadth of knowledge and keep up with research. Right. Research publications, research, medical knowledge, it's doubling time, meaning the time it doubles has gone from years to months, and now we're approaching like weeks and days. There's too much information out there to really comprehend. And so with a physician who's got to deal with a huge patient load, they don't have time to keep up with this stuff, right? But that's my job, is to keep up with these things, because in order to advance research as a researcher, I have to understand where we are, what the next question is, and try and get that funded. So I'm always doing my best to keep up with current knowledge.
Right.
And so I see that I have the time to do that because that's my job, and most physicians don't have the time to do that. So I don't know. I wish there were a better way to convey, the findings from research to medical practice, because I do see conflicts between what the data say and what doctors recommend. Right. I see that all the time.
How do you handle that?
And I see that personally.
Stress the hell out of you.
I get frustrated.
Your cortisol level must go shoot right up.
Yeah, it's not good for you. I get frustrated. And I'm like, why don't you know about this thing?
Sure.
And I don't know what, maybe it's this podcast. Maybe we need everybody to listen to this, and we'll talk about what what is the best recommendation for people to have a healthy lifestyle that's beyond the blood test and the vital signs.
Right.
We talk about vital signs. We talk about vital signs being your mobility, your cognitive function, your emotional health. All those things are like vital signs that I care about.
Right.
Those are vital signs. Vitality is, your energy in your life. Those are important vital signs, not just blood pressure and all those other things, which are important.
Right.
And there's medicine for that. How about the other side of vital?
Right. Well, this tees up the question I've been wanting to ask the whole podcast, and it's a loaded question, is what role does AI in your mind play, both in finding patterns in research that's already been done, and maybe even extrapolating out forecasted research?
This is a loaded question.
It is loaded. I think it remains to be determined. AI now, I think, is quite untrustworthy. Okay. It makes things up.
Yeah.
I don't use it for anything in my research. When I do research, I find the publications that I need to write my grant, write my paper, whatever it is. I'm doing that right now. I'll be doing that after I leave here. And so I go to the primary literature and I read it to understand it. Right. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no role for AI if it's good AI. So that's a big assumption there. And I can tell you that some medical journals are actually moving away from having a researcher write what's called a review article. So I talk about these meta-analyses, right? Where you take lots of accumulated data from tens or hundreds of studies and put them together in one analysis. That's a perfect thing for AI to solve. Right. Go find all the data that are related to this topic, walking speed and longevity or whatever, and pull it together and run this very specific analysis and give me the result. And if you can, again, have good AI and train it, it can probably do a better job of that than a researcher.
Right.
So I see AI as being very critical to helping us understand the breadth of data and summarize it for us. I'm worried about it right now, doing that for us.
Gotcha.
So basically, you're creating the framework for AI, and they're executing it.
Yeah, there are some journals that are testing this now. So rather than having me go and find all the publications on a topic and, maybe I missed a few or I got something wrong, if you can train AI to do that, it'll be a lot less subjective.
Interesting.
So we'll see where that goes.
So at the end of the day, how are you're liking us about Avexia moving into our own little blue zone? Seems like we're on our way.
Yeah, I think if we're, and we could talk about blue zones now, if you're talking about blue zones when it comes to healthy lifestyle, all the things that we talked about today, Avexia is there. And, we added community to that as well.
Yep.
And those are the learnings from, the blue zone lifestyle. So I'm all for that.
That's awesome. What's great is we have all the tools here too at Avexia to really align to all your lectures for success.
Yeah, I've gotten so much out of your lectures. It's actually helped me change my cardio routine, my sleep routine, my strength routine, and we just look forward to sharing that with the community.
Oh, thanks.
So thanks again, Greg.
Thanks,
you're the coolest epidemiologist I've ever met.
My favorite epidemiologist.
Stay cool, brother. Stay cool.
All right, thanks, guys.
So that's a wrap on episode number 3 in the books.
Love
it. The Avexia Exchange. How do you feel?
What a cool dude, right?
Yeah.
So good to be on our side.
Thanks again, Greg.
Felt great.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.